You know, there are so many third-party D&D books out there. It can be really tough to figure out which ones are the best. One thing I want to do here on the channel is draw your attention to the ones that I think deserve to be on your gaming shelves. I remember one of the first ones that we reviewed here was this one here, Odyssey of the Dragon Lords, which is still one of my favorite 5e adventures. You can see our review of it up in the corner of your screen up there. I even put on a toga for that thumbnail. You're welcome? I don't know. Now, we were just sent a new one from our friends over at Kobold Press right here. It is another one that I think is really impressive, Tome of Heroes. It's not a campaign though, like Odyssey of the Dragon Lords. This is a compendium of player options, including new races, class options, backgrounds, feats, adventuring gear, spells and magic systems, magic items, and one of my favorite parts, new subsystems that GMs can introduce into their game to give you a little bit more depth to your adventure. And it comes from Kobold Press, so you know that they've pulled in really talented writers and designers to make sure it is all balanced and play tested and refined. If you're looking for a quality rules expansion book, this one may be for you. Before we dive in, if you're looking for some fun one-shots to test out all your new player options, consider signing up for the Big Bad Booklet series from our sponsor Hitpoint Press. Each booklet comes with a new Big Bad and story to tell with stat blocks, backstory, role-playing advice, story hooks, layer information, and more. Plus, you'll get 10 digital reference cards to help you run the encounters, VTT assets if you want to play online, and even an STL file to print out a mini of that month's Big Bad. This month, come meet Xera'yyn, an eldritch horror who's managed to slip through a crack in reality and tie its essence to a mortal host, a tiefling scholar named Fidelity. Now it plans to shatter the veil between the worlds permanently. Will you stop Xera'yyn from devastating the material plane, or will it shatter your party to ruins? Find out today at bigbads.com or use the link below the video. Let's start with the races in Tome of Heroes. I haven't been too happy with the way D&D has handled races thus far in 5th edition. Many of the most recent ones lack enough lore to be able to root your character into the world, and there's so little mechanical difference between the races that playing one feels kind of like playing them all. But Tome of Heroes does do a good job of expanding the information you have. Each race gets at least a full page of lore, and many of them come specifically with information about how to best roleplay them. Mechanically, they're still limited by 5e's limited race rule set, so you don't get like full feat trees like you get in Pathfinder 2nd edition, but there are some fun mechanical options here. Here's a quick list of the races included, and forgive me if I mispronounced something. Alcedes are the cousins of the centaurs. You have catfolk, you have darakhul, who are ravenous undead creatures, and we'll come back to them in a minute. Darrow, who resemble underdark dwarves. Drow, arena, who are basically hedgehog folk. You have Gearforged, who are essentially androids who may resemble other humanoid races like humans, gnomes, dwarves, or kobolds. You also get Minotaurs, mushroom folk, the monstrous satyr, Shades, who are ghosts who create their own corporeal bodies, plus new varieties of dwarf, elf, gnome, and halfling. Now, you can certainly use these races in whatever setting you base your campaign in, and many of them already exist in the Forgotten Realms in one form or another, but Kobold Press has their own campaign setting called Midgard, which has a ton of books already that you can dive into if you want. Tome of Heroes is setting agnostic, but there are sidebars about how many of these races tie into the Midgard setting if you are using it. So let me dig down into just one of these races to give you a sense of what this book has to offer. The darakhul are basically vampires. They have an evil empire in the Underdark, but not all of them are megalomaniacal. Some want to better control their own ghoulish appetites and may become adventurers. So the book contains sections on how to disguise your undead nature, how to satisfy your appetite for raw flesh, and how to connect your current undead life to your previous life, and how you might be dealing with that transition. The stats and abilities largely depend on what race you were before you died. Darrow, Dragonborn, Drow, Dwarf, etc. Tome of Heroes gives you plenty of meat to seek your role-playing fangs into, more so than many of the non-core D&D races that we already have. This book also has a lot of new subclasses, like a half dozen or so for each class. 70 new subclasses in all. I'm just going to call out some of them that spoke to me. The cleric will get the black powder domain, and maybe it's just because I'm about to start a gunslinging campaign of my own, but this one seems like a lot of fun, especially when you combine it with all the new black powder gear and weapon options that they offer later in the book. We'll come back to that. They also get the portal domain, which gives you access to a lot of spells and abilities centered around doorways and transportation and the multiverse. You can also use your channel divinity ability to teleport your allies and even sometimes your enemies. The druid gets the circle of bees, which lets you speak in the language of bee dancing. You can also grow a stinger from your wrist, and at higher levels, you can just cover yourself with bees. Just another day of saving the bees. The fighter can become a buccaneer, a chaplain, a legionary, a pugilist, a radiant pikeman, a time blade, or a so-called tunnel watcher based on dwarven traditions. The monk has everything from the way of the humble elephant to the way of the tipsy monkey. The ranger also gets the option of being a gunslinger or a snake speaker. Your rogue can become everything from a cat burglar to a smuggler. Your sorcerer can also gain some control over black powder, or maybe they're an eldritch wastelander. There are lots of information about possible warlock patrons, especially if you're playing in the Midgard setting, maybe ancient dragons, animal lords, or old nature spirits. Finally, they have options for specializing your wizard in subjects like mastering cantrips, familiars, or black powder again. Or maybe they're a spellsmith. A spellsmith is something entirely different, who craft their own unique arcane spells, or a gravebinder, who is the other side of the necromancer coin. There are just a ton of fun and thematic options here. And again, having a book from a company like Kobold Press means that the options all went through an extensive process of editing and playtesting, which is way more than you can say for most of the third-party content out there. They also have a chapter with new backgrounds and feats. Just like in core D&D, a lot of this is to help you choose those role-playing touchstones to help set up your character to be pretty well-rounded. This book introduces background options like having been an innkeeper, a former adventurer, a court servant, a mercenary recruit, or a minstrel. There's 19 in all, if I counted correctly, and they each come with rolling tables for your personality traits and ideals, bonds, and flaws. Next, you get 15 new feats. Some have pretty specific prereqs, which makes them a little bit more flavorful, like Boundless Reserve for the monk to regain ki, Rhyme Caster for spellcasters from cold climates, which allows you to deal cold damage with your spells and gain some cold resistance. Floriographer, if you're proficient in Arcana History or Nature, which teaches you the secret language of flowers. And Harrier, if you know the Misty Step spell, or if you have the Shadow Traveler Shadow Fae trait. And that gives you the ability, it gives you an ability score upgrade, and it also gives you advantage on attacks after you Misty Step. And there's a few more that are universal. Draconic Rune Casting opens up some spellcasting options presented later in the book related to Draconic Runes. Die Hard gives you advantage on some saves, including death saves. And Forest Denizen gives you a number of advantages in the woods. I think feats are where it's at in RPGs, so the more the merrier, and while there aren't a ton in Tome of Heroes, the ones they have are fun, flavorful, and potentially pretty potent. The gear option, the gear chapter, gives you gunpowder rules like we talked about and gunpowder weapons, plus a ton of just new, fun, mundane weapons like bolas, bladed scarves, double axes, a clockwork crossbow, and a lot more. You also get new gear like various bombs and other black powder items, new poisons, a surgery kit, some new toolkits, and a bunch of random fun items like elephant saddles and a bandolier. There's also a whole section on crafting clockwork items like this clockwork warhorse. And there's new vehicles and mounts like the very popular war pig. Now, my personal favorite of the book is the new adventuring rules for game masters. There are new systems for tracking your party's court reputation in the royal halls or among the nobility, crafting masterwork pieces of art, creating preserves from your food sources, taking care of your animals and training them, running criminal enterprises, foraging, growing and cultivating magical plants, running your own trading company with tons of rules about trade goods, modes of transportation, setting up trade routes. It's a whole thing with lots of tables to help you tabulate your profits. There are also new systems for owning and operating a manor for your party. I mean, there are pages and pages on running your manor with managing the staff, defending it against threats, growing it, and having tons of complications that might make things more interesting. Then you get to new group themes, which are new gameplay rules that help explain why your adventuring party came together to begin with. For example, they may have been imprisoned together, which is how Out of the Abyss starts. Now, the book gives you a lot of these ideas and options for why the party might be imprisoned together to help you if you're looking for a way to kick off your campaign, but it also gives you new abilities. In this case, one party member is able to cure certain conditions from another with just a touch once a day. And then they can use their story of imprisonment to finagle themselves one non-magical item or service worth 1,000 gold pieces or less once a month. And the book provides quite a few of these new group themes, which are fun and can help you kick off your story. This chapter also gives us something I've never really seen before in this form: new weapon options. These are things that you can do with your weapons on your turn in lieu of dealing damage. You can use a bow or crossbow to pin a creature's clothing to the wall or to the floor. You can disarm a foe. You can swing at their legs with a slashing weapon to hamstring them. You can grab a hold of someone with a whip, or you can ricochet your shots around corners or into cover. There are quite a few of these things, and I love them. Anything that gives your players fun and cinematic things to do on their turns is fantastic. We need more of these. Now, the Magic and Spells chapter, of course, brings us a lot of new spells. Again, they introduce a whole new subsystem dealing with draconic runes. Again, just multiple pages about what they are, how to learn them, and how to use them in your game. It is a whole new system of magic that can really shake up your game. There's a section on hedge magic, including finding and cultivating magical plants, like we talked about before, with lots of example plants that do different things as your gardener levels up. And then there are over 50 new spells that I will leave you to discover on your own. Really, the only criticism I have of this book is that there isn't a great table of contents or an index in the back, so it can be a little bit tricky to see all your options at a glance, or to find just the things you need when you need them. With a lot of new options interacting with one another, like all the new black powder items and feats and subclasses, it would be really nice just to see a summary table giving you a nice overview of everything the Tome of Heroes has to offer, just on black powder, for example. But frankly, this book is going to be used in all of my 5e games going forward. I love the new subsystems for managing a manor, raising animals, setting up a trading company or a criminal enterprise. That's the stuff that I love and I think my players love. And the new subclasses are thematic and fun and balanced and comprehensive. So this is maybe one of my new favorite third-party 5e books. And I have to admit, I haven't really looked through a lot of what Kobold Press has to offer before. So if this is any indication of the quality of their work, I really want to dig deeper. If you're a fan of Kobold Press, leave me a comment down below letting me know what your favorite Kobold Press books are. Tome of Heroes is expected to ship in July 2022. The hardcover book is $50 and the PDF is $30. And keep an eye on their Kickstarters, which happen pretty frequently, as that's an inexpensive way to pick up their new major books. We'll have a link to their web store down below. And don't forget to check out the Big Bad Booklet series from our friends at Hit Point Press at the link below or at bigbads.com, because you're gonna want some fun little adventures to test out all these new player options. And thank you for watching today. I'm really curious to hear what you think about this book. We also have videos coming pretty soon highlighting the recent Starfinder and Pathfinder releases. I don't know which videos come out first, so that might already be out. Some of these are really exciting new books from Starfinder and Pathfinder. And be sure you're subscribed to see it. And I have a computer game that I need to review here pretty soon. As soon as I can get to it, something a little bit new for us. Any guesses what that might be? Liking our video and subscribing to the channel helps us out a lot. You can also find us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. For now, though, please stay safe, have fun, love each other, and I will see you next time at the Gallant Goblin.